person, he doesn't have.
Mr. Trevino. On, folks. Hope we'll try to maintain order, but we'll ask everyone if you have comments to make, to use the raise hand feature. That's part of Zoom. I find it usually down either along the bottom or along one side. It's a little bit different on every different device, but there should be, find a raised hand feature that'll put up a blue hand on your screen, and we'll watch for that. Again, we're going to go ahead and we'll managing things on this end too. We'll turn people's video off if you can't find it yourself. Oh, you may.
Well, that's probably a good thing.
Well, are you going to use your own? Yeah.
No, I'm not. I'll use your phone there.
Okay, Matt, I'm going to call the meeting to order.
Okay.
This meeting of the Patton Township Board of Supervisors, July 15th, 2021, is now called to order. The first agenda item is the Pledge of Allegiance, so if you're able, please stand and face our flag and say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which stands one nation,
under God.
liberty and justice for all. All right, somebody's audio is on. Who is that? Betsy? Is your audio on? Maybe you should mute yourself right now. Thank you.
It was not my dog.
Oh,
Can you hear me? Can you hear me all
Yeah.
right, though? Okay, I've just been having trouble. I may actually have to log off and get onto my other computer.
Okay, I ask the public's patience with us. We're doing a hybrid meeting of the Patton Township Board of Supervisors meeting for the very first time. So, you know, we'll be having technical adjustments throughout the meeting probably. So the next item is public comments. If any resident has wishes to make a comment to the Board of Supervisors on an item that is not on the printed agenda, this is your opportunity to address us. So I see two residents present. They're not indicating a wish to make comments. Susan, do you see anybody on Zoom who's raising their hand?
I don't see any.
No?
Right.
Okay. Looks like we don't have any public comments. Okay, item 3, the reason, oh, yes.
Yeah.
If you're going to speak, you'll need to come up to the podium, please.
Is this the only time for public comments, or are we going to, will
There
there
will
be additional?
You'll have an opportunity to talk to a specific agenda item when we get to it, yes.
Okay.
But for now, if it's a comment not related to what we have on the agenda, then you can make a comment now.
Okay, no, I just had so if it's on the agenda, that's what we're commenting on?
No.
No.
Not on the
If
agenda?
it's not on the agenda, you'll have an opportunity to speak during the agenda item.
Thank you.
We okay, Doug? Okay.
We're okay for the moment.
Okay. Moving on. All right, the reason we're all here tonight is the item number 3, noise complaint, Green Hollow Park pickleball courts. In your agenda is a summary of the meetings we've already held and some of the actions the board has taken so far. So we've also included as attachments to the agenda correspondence we received from various members of the center region who wish to address the board and give us their input on this item. So those are attachments to the agenda. I'm going to now ask our manager, Doug Erickson, to give us any additional background that's not on the written in the agenda.
I think let me run through the advisory committee did meet on Monday. Reviewed a lot of the information that's also included on the agenda. Went through and asked each of the folks, we've got some, asked each of the committee members, you know, what their short-term recommendation might be for the next, well, from now until, say, the end of the playing season, and then a long-term recommendation for what should be done. And I'm going to ask Pam Salakangas to speak for herself when we get to there, but the residents that are part of the committee, Alan Friedlander and Stephen Garcia, both agreed with the proposals that had been put forth by Supervisor Tees in her memo that was included with the agenda for the short term, which included the removal of nets and reducing hours. The pickleball players and our representative from the RAC were both of a different mind. They would like to see the status quo remain in terms of hours and number of nets up. I think in the long term, everybody thinks that building new courts at Burnell Road Park is the best thing to do. And then again, there was some disagreement about what should be done in Green Hollow in the long term. Again, the pickleball players, I think we should maintain some level of pickleball at Green Hollow Park, perhaps 2 courts, and convert the other 2 pickleball courts back to tennis. And the residents would rather see it revert to tennis. And with that, I'm probably, let me see if there's anything else I want to touch on. We did also included a copy of the sound data that was included. Again, we just asked the consultant to collect data at this point. We are planning to have them go back out sometime early part of August and collect a new set of data. This will represent the reduced level after the Y's been open. You know, we don't want to do it in July because the Y is permitting free play for anybody at their facility until the end of July. So August will be a better representation of, I think, the folks who are going to use Green Hollow. Again, then we'll have that data to study pre and post. And I think with that, if you'll permit me, Mr. Chair, I'll ask Pam Salakangas to...
Well, before we get to Pam, while she's activating her video and audio, Supervisor Abrams had a question.
Well, I just wanted to make a motion for us to consider, and that is that Patton Township authorize and fund the conversion of 2 tennis courts at Burnell Road Park to pickleball courts, and at the same time authorize and fund the conversion of the 4 pickleball courts in Green Hollow back to tennis courts. And the implementation would not occur at Green Hollow until the Burnell Road courts were operational. And I think this would ultimately solve the basic problem that we have right now and offer more opportunities for pickleball in a place where we're not likely to have so much controversy as to whether it's too much noise in a place. And this really hit home when we realized that, for example, the Ambleside Park could possibly be used, but then there are houses within 500 feet. And so if 500 feet's the criteria, what are we doing with pickleball courts at Green Hollow? We didn't realize that this was going to be such an issue 4 or 5 years ago, but pickleball is rapidly growing, and so that's why this motion.
Okay, since I was hoping we'd get the motion to a motion after public comments, but now that it's been made, we'll need to see if there's a second to Elliot's motion.
Second, Anita.
Supervisor Tees, Anita Tees, seconded the motion. Okay, let's keep having discussion about this. Public will be able to comment. You stole Anita's thunder because I was going to ask her
No,
next to
That's good.
present her
You said it
proposal.
well.
Is there anything you wish to add, Anita?
Elliot said it Supervisor Abrams said it very, very well. The questions that I think, that I talked about in my written memo, and I realize not everyone on this call or at this meeting may have seen the written memo that I did, were the questions I think facing the township are, what are the appropriate parks for pickleball play in Patton Township, and is Green Hollow appropriate for pickleball, and what opportunities are there for the recreational pickleball players? And as Supervisor Abrams has noted, that when we asked the Recreation Advisory Committee to survey all of the parks in Patton Township for those who had space and for new courts, and only 2 were named, Burnell Road Park and Ambleside. And as Supervisor Abrams noted, Ambleside was deemed not suitable because the current national dialogue of minimum space between courts and homes in noise-sensitive areas, and that's the key, the noise-sensitive areas, is 500 feet. So Supervisor Abrams just captured it, in good terms. As you look at Green Hollow Park, because I have heard many comments of saying, well, can't we have noise abatement for that? And the reason I believe that Green Hollow Park, one of the reasons, is not suitable for pickleball, whereas Burnell Road Park is. Green Hollow, oh, it's so aptly named, it's a hollow. And you go down, if you've been there, it's a beautiful hollow. You go down into the hollow. But the challenge with that is that beautiful hollow creates an amphitheater-like expression for sound. So your sound goes up, 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 and over those nice fences that are surrounding the pickleball courts. So even if you could install very expensive noise abatement fences, because of the particular unique characteristic of the hollow, it would defeat those noise abatements. And the thoughts too of, could you have green rackets? And that would help with the noise. But even in talking to pickleball players, they've noted that your recreational players, your newcomer players, are they going to want to spend $150 for a racket? And how would you enforce that? How would you enforce going down and looking at their rackets? And how would you enforce green rackets? And if you had foam balls or if you had other quiet balls, again, there's both the cost, and players I've talked to have said that those kind of balls alter the way they bounce. It alters the nature of the play. So noise abatement is not really an answer there. And the unique characteristic of Green Hollow, I know people wish that it could have pickleball there, but looking at Ambleside and the 500 feet, I don't see how they can logically hold on to that view. And because at Green Hollow, not only do you have the one house 110 feet closest and another 130 feet, but you have 15 houses within 500 feet. I've counted them all on Google today again, 15 houses. And also, and we'll get to talking about interim measures of what hours might be best for the current Patton Township pickleball players to continue until, if the board passes this motion that Supervisor Abrams has proposed of building at Green Hollow or building at Burnell and converting at Green Hollow in the interim, to have the hours that are adequate for the pickleball players. And I don't know that we want that discussion right now, but I've proposed 32 hours, which I think in some configuration would more than meet the needs. We can talk about that more during the discussion time, but I thank Supervisor Abrams for presenting the matter and really the heart of the matter. Thank you.
All right. Is Pam Salakandis on? Pam, or you have something to contribute?
Yes, I think Doug was providing a report from the advisory committee that met earlier this week, and I think he just wanted us to report out the agency's input. So what we provided on Tuesday was, we also reviewed Supervisor Teese's proposal for hours for the fall, and we agreed with the, but we actually added one more suggestion to the advisory committee discussion. We are concerned that after the July free play is concluded, a portion of pickleball folks will join the YMCA and a portion will not. And we are concerned that based on what we've seen just since the courts have opened, there's still some volume of play at Green Hollow. And one of the suggestions we made was to consider removing 2 nets of the 4 that are there, which does also guarantee you a reduction in volume of play at that court. And that's just something that we made a suggestion to on Tuesday. In addition to that, we've been using semi-permanent, basically laminated signage at the courts, and we're hoping that once the Patton Township supervisors do make a decision, we'd be able to then order more permanent signage so it's more visible, and it may need to be posted in multiple locations on both doors and maybe on the sides of the court. The other recommendation we made, I know Doug was trying to get some consensus from the advisory group. We suggested that we were in support of courts being built at Burnell Road Park as well, but not within the current tennis courts as their own separate set of courts. There's some concern that we have about managing pickleball right beside tennis, and we would not want to see the loss of those 4 courts. That is a great bank of courts right now that are available for use. Windscreens are going in the next few weeks, and we're rebuilding tennis right now, so we don't want to see, we did not want to see those courts reverted, but those pickleball courts be built separately. I know that there's a motion on the tables, but I'm just reporting out from Tuesday. And then the last thing we suggested was that the courts do be returned to tennis at Green Hollow, and several other members, as Doug reported, wanted to see a mix. So some pickleball and some tennis. There just needs to be really strong design and separating those courts from each other so that balls aren't going across those courts, so a very tall fence. And, it's a different game, 2 different games played side by side. So tennis folks may end up playing elsewhere just because, again, if there's a live pickleball game, it's a different sound, different kind of play. Those were the recommendations coming out of our agency. I was reporting on behalf of Jim Carpenter and myself, who have both served for both meetings when one of us couldn't be there. So Jim is also here tonight if he had anything to add. The only new piece that I have, and you let me know, Doug, when I should report this, but I did have a community member contact me with some input that she would like me to share at this meeting as well. And I can do that at the next most appropriate moment if this is not it.
Let's hold that to the time that we're having the public comment. So Anita Tees, go ahead.
Yeah. Mr. Chair, I noticed that there's been a question in the comments about what hours I was proposing in the 32 hours. I was proposing that the weekend hours stayed the same, 10 a.m. to 5 p.m., and that on 3 of the weekdays, there would be 6 hours of play, some time in the morning, some time in the late afternoon. On Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, 9 to 12 or 10 to 1, and then again 4 to 7, which would allow for after work and after school once September comes, but no hours on Mondays or Fridays. So that was the configuration that I was proposing. Of those 32 hours, and my grade school math teacher would smile that I'm still practicing my math, but you have 32 hours per week. If you had 4 courts open for those 32 hours, that would be 128 court hours, and you can have 4 people on each court. So 128 times 4 players is 512 player hours for those 32 hours with 4 courts open. If you only had 2 courts open, that would still provide 256 player hours per week. So that was the proposal. I was proposing all 4 courts, but I hear that the Center Region Parks and Rec is proposing 2 courts stay open instead of 4. But I wanted to answer the question that came up in the chat about what hours
Okay.
we were discussing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, I'm going to open, unless a supervisor, Pam or Betsy, have a specific question you want to ask. If not, I'll go to the public, allow the public to make comments. I don't see Betsy or
I had
Pam.
one other,
You need to go to the podium.
Okay,
Just
let's
queue
go
up behind the
to
podium and we'll call it.
members of the
Dan, I have one
public.
other- Dan, one other proposal to put in here that I wanted to mention,
One other proposal.
to go along with this motion.
Oh, hold
Just
one
so
second.
people- Just so people know it's on the table.
Okay, go ahead. No,
One other idea was that since it's 2 weeks until the August 1st deadline for doing something, that one way to establish which hours they are would be with a version of a doodle poll that would be open to all players and hosted on the township's website, where you pick on the calendar what your favorite hours are. And then at the end of the 2 weeks, it's figured out what those hours are, and that's what we base the decision on. So that there may be some people who like playing at a certain time, other people, it would be open to them according to the 3 days a week thing, but that doesn't do them any good. And so we could find that out with a poll.
all right, so you're adding that to your motion.
I don't know if it's part of the motion, but it's just a suggestion to help solve the
Suggestion.
problem.
Okay. All right, we can discuss that when the board. All right, sir, go ahead. Please give us your name and the street you live on.
Yes, Kate. My name is Rick Milgrub. I'm a resident of Patton Township. I'm a voter of Patton Township. I'm a taxpayer of Patton Township, and I play pickleball. Okay? With a group of other senior citizens, we go several times a week to Green Hollow. We usually go in the morning. We usually go 5 to 6:30 in the afternoon when the sun's not up there. We don't belong to the Y. Okay, so this is the only place that we go to play. Since they opened up the courts at the Y, we never see crowds when we're there. And again, we're not there in the middle of the afternoon. We're there usually from 11 to 1, from 5 to 6:30, which many people would consider prime time, and it's never crowded. 2 courts, maybe, we've never had 3 full courts play. Now, I know people are still complaining, but since the Y opened up, are those same complaints still coming in? Are they still complaining about the noise? Are they still complaining about the parking? I don't quite understand. You know, it seems like they're just continuing their fight from last month. It seems like that's over. You know, it's a new era now. There's a new group of people playing, and it's not as busy, not as noisy, not as congested as it was before. So I don't quite understand why they want to impose all these limitations now. Okay? Now, one of the recommendations was let's take down 2 of the courts, the nets. Okay? When we go there, Okay? Sometimes two of the courts might be in the shade, two of the courts might not be in the shade. Okay? Sometimes we go there, if it rained, two of the courts might still be wet, two of the courts might not be wet. We don't know. Okay? But I've never been there since the Y opened up their courts where all four courts have been used, but we do need the option to play in the best court for us. So again, setting 32 hours or saying, well, just arbitrarily, we're going to close 2 days, I don't understand for what. I just don't understand the reason for doing this now. They're talking about opening up new courts. Great. I'm all in favor of opening up new courts, although I'm going to end up paying for those courts, just like I've paid for these courts. Okay? But those courts aren't open yet. Okay? They talk about, well, when the Y stops their free play, people are going to swarm back to Green Hollow. We don't know that yet. I think it's premature to make that decision. I think that the situation should remain as is through the summer. And if need be, have somebody go in the courts. I don't know how many of you have actually stood there for hours to see how many people go there. But again, they're not that crowded. So answer me, are the same complaints coming in now that came in before? If the answer is no, why are we doing this? If there are no complaints about the parking, and I think by making the designated parking space, that pretty much solved that issue. Okay? So, as a taxpayer, as a pickleball enthusiast, I believe that the park is for the people. Okay? I'm one of the people. I want to play there. I'm not noisy. I'm not rowdy. It's a great exercise for senior citizens. I want it to remain as is unless there's legitimate reasons for anything to change now. That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Susan?
Stephen Esky has raised his hand.
Stephen
Esky?
Esky. Okay, Mr. Esky, you unmute yourself and you can go ahead and give your comments.
Thank you for recognizing me. I and my wife are both hopefully going to speak. The issue with the noise, I don't think is a matter of being rowdy while you're playing. The noise issue simply comes from playing the game itself, and I don't think that issue is pertinent to the number of players utilizing the courts. That same amount of noise for the residents applies whether it's one person hitting the ball with their racket, or whether there's 16 people hitting the ball with a racket. The noise issue is simply systemic of the game itself. So I don't think that any decision should be made on the number of players utilizing the courts. It is whether the play is utilizing the courts at all. Also, any studies that are done concerning noise, I don't know how to schedule them to be done during play, but I think it is pertinent that any noise studies be done while play is occurring. I don't think it's valid to have a study, whether that be of parking or play, to be done without the issue that is being studied actually occurring while the study is being done. The saying that it can everything can be done by the calendar, whether that be the end of July when the YMCA courts closed down to membership. Again, it's a matter of whether the play is occurring here at all at Green Hollow, which is what we're discussing, not the amount of play that is occurring. The Parks and Rec recommendation that the courts be half and half pickleball, half tennis. They themselves have just, I believe in this meeting, noted that they cannot occur simultaneously and in proximity next to each other. So I don't think the issue of having two pickleball courts and one tennis court is a valid issue for us to even consider. How many players? I think something else for us in terms of the parking. To say that the parking lined out on the streets has happened. Again, I don't think we've had a valid test of that, because since the parking places have been lined out on the streets, play has, as your player has. I'm sorry. I don't know where is. I don't know where I'm getting an echo from, but the play has been down because of a couple of reasons. One may be because the courts at the YMCA have opened, but also we have to consider that play has been down because of the weather, because the weather has been extremely hot and a number of players choose not to play, as well as there have been a number of storms come through, and so play has been down due to that as well. So there are many factors I think we need to consider in terms of saying, well, play has been down and so it's not an issue. I think the issue itself is play. I do want to revisit the parking issue. My complaint about parking on Sierra has always been because of the ability of traffic to flow in both directions, as well as to turn left from Sierra onto Cornwall. Something that I realized as I continued to drive around the park after the last meeting is the width of the street. Sierra is not as wide as Park Forest Avenue. And so when we had parking come up on Sierra, that is what created a bottleneck in terms of traffic on Sierra as opposed to Park Forest Avenue. I don't know, Doug, you may be able to reference the width of the two streets and the ability of two-way traffic to pass at the same time, along with cars parked on the street. But your expertise on that is far beyond mine. To say players who live in Park Forest must have a pickleball court in Park Forest, I think the proposal is allowing for that. And I think as many players who play at Green Hollow Park and drive to play will occur, whether the courts be at Green Hollow or elsewhere in the township. And I think removing the pickleball courts will return the Green Hollow Park to the community park it was intended by. I'm sorry it took so long. I know my wife wants to talk about the ability to play tennis. Her name is Heather Herzog, and I'll allow her to speak if that is allowable by our time limits.
Okay, Mr. Ersky, I think your time is up. Thank you for your comments. I have Amy Wall is next.
Yes.
Amy, unmute yourself and go ahead. You have the floor.
Mr. Chair, if I might jump in here for a minute, procedural comment. I would invite those speaking currently to also share your video if you feel comfortable. If you're speaking, it's perfectly fine to share your video. And it's also perfectly fine not to share it if you don't feel comfortable as you're speaking.
Okay, Amy, you still wish to make a comment? Please unmute yourself. Go ahead, you have the floor.
I do, I'm sorry, I was having some technical difficulties. I would like to speak to the prospect of taking the 2 nets down in the short term. That, to me, will cause a lot of issues, mainly because as pickleball players, there really are not a lot of venues in the area, and that will significantly cut down where and when we can play. And no, not all 4 courts are always being used, but there are times when all 4 courts are being used. And especially if it's a week where it rains a few days, then we're really being cut out of having anywhere to play at a public free park. So I do think that that, at a minimum, should be taken off the table in the short term, just due to the fact that there are no other places to play. And that also would speak to converting them back to tennis courts, is that there are several tennis courts in the township, and particularly in the county, while that does not apply for pickleball. So that is what I wanted to speak about tonight.
Okay, thank you for your comments. You see any other raised
Well,
hands?
Stephen Esky has his hand up.
I think it's for his wife to
It's for his
speak,
wife
yeah.
to speak?
Pardon?
Stephen Esky has his hands up, but it's for his wife to speak?
Right.
Oh, okay. Stephen Esky's wife, I don't know if you're Mrs. Esky or you have a different.
Her name is Heather.
He said Heather Herzog.
My name is Heather,
Heather, okay, go ahead, Heather.
and I wanted to talk a little bit about just the notion that I've heard in a number of these meetings that there's just never been really any interest in tennis in this community and in this neighborhood. And I can say very strongly, I know many, many people, many neighbors who were quite interested in tennis for years. And also just from a family point of view, I feel that something needs to be said about the whole progression of when my family first moved here, which was about 12, 13 years ago. And we were so excited when we saw the park and we saw that there were tennis courts. Our daughter was already a budding tennis player. And what we quickly found was that the courts were almost unusable. And so for years, it seemed like there was talk about renovating the courts, making it possible for families to use it. And then I remember there was a survey at one point that a number of us filled out, and it was regarding refurbishing the tennis courts and other parts of the park. And I also know that many of my neighbor friends, along with our family, indicated that we would love to see that happen and the courts be made more state-of-the-art and usable. So I guess that's really what I wanted to say, is that if we do revert back to tennis courts, and if they are truly modern, usable courts, I would love to use them. My daughter, who is now in Colorado and a young woman, but comes to visit, would come and play with me. I would certainly play with friends. And I know the many neighbors over the years who expressed the same kind of dismay that I was feeling, would just love to see those courts really in their best possible, reinstated and in their best possible state.
All right, thank you for your comments. Next is
Lenny.
Jenny.
Lenny. Lenny.
Oh, Lenny, sorry. Lenny, please unmute yourself, you have the floor.
Thanks. Yeah, I just need some clarification. So I guess to begin with, how much time is allocated to each speaker?
5 minutes maximum.
Thank you. And the first gentleman who spoke asked you a direct question. I have not heard an answer. What is the process?
I'm sorry?
The first gentleman who spoke asked you a direct question. I have not heard an answer. So what is your process? Do you answer all questions later or what?
Remind me what his question was, because I don't remember.
Why don't you ask him to repeat it then, because I'm not going to speak
Don't
for him.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think my questions were, there were all these complaints before about the noise, the crowds, the parking, et cetera. Are there the complaints still coming in now, after the people from the Y have left? Are those same complaints continuing, or have they stopped? And if they've stopped, then why are we trying to solve a problem that doesn't exist anymore?
Lenny, is that the question you want answered?
That's the question he asked that he wanted answered.
I think the simplest answer is that we have two residents who are on the advisory group committee, which met just Monday, and they still have not changed their viewpoint, even though the use of the courts has declined since the Y's courts opened. So, no, we have not, there's been, Doug, maybe you can correct me.
The residents said that the play is reduced, but it's still very loud.
So they haven't changed their viewpoints about it, yeah.
Correct.
Elliot, yes?
Let me just remind folks what the purpose of the motion made earlier was. One was to solve the problem that eventually closing down pickleball play in Green Hollow, but not until new courts were done at Burnell Road Park, and also to authorize the funding for this. The advisory groups, as wonderful as they are, can't actually spend the township's money. The supervisors have to vote this in, and you can't just promise something and then not deliver on it. All over the country, you see this, we're going to do this, but we're not going to fund it. That's nonsense, and so we're suggesting here that it be funded and that no changes be made to take away the pickleball until the new courts, whatever they are available.
Lenny, do you have further comments you wish to make? Go ahead.
And yeah, I had some confusion there, and that led to my question that I raised in the chat, was that, what are the specifics of the motion or the proposal on the table? It seems to me that what I just heard Elliot say was there will be no changes in the pickleball courts in Green Hollow until the ones at Burnell Park are operational. Is that correct?
That's the proposal. It hasn't passed yet, but that's the proposal.
I understand that, but that's the motion on the table.
Right.
Nevertheless, I have heard other comments talking about a reduction in the number of pickleball courts at Green Hollow. And so my question is that proposal, if there is a reduction of pickleball courts at Green Hollow, will that then only be implemented after the new Burnell Park courts are operational? Under the current motion.
There has to be an amendment. The proposal will have to be amended for that to happen first.
Oh, so it's not, you are talking, I thought I just heard Elliot say no changes in pickleball courts until Burnell is operational, but now I'm hearing that, if that's the case, we have to modify. So that's leading to my question in the chat. What specifically is the motion on the table?
I'll read it. Should I read it again?
Sure. If you want clarification on the motion, let's see, Supervisor Tees, did you want to clarify the motion?
Yeah, Anita.
What I hear are two separate issues. One is long-term. One is saying, in the long term, this board, this is the motion, will support and fund new pickleball courts at Burnell Road Park and convert Green Hollow to tennis. And that conversion will happen at Green Hollow once the new courts, the new dedicated pickleball courts at Burnell Road Park are operational. People, by the way, can still play, recreational players, and I understand some are, playing at Burnell Road Park at the dual-lined tennis pickleball courts. Now, I know that
I know this is
they
not
experience,
answering that question.
yeah, but, so I wanted to clarify what we're talking about.
I
Are
can clarify.
We're talking about new dedicated pickleball courts. We're not talking about the current dual line courts out at Burnell. So that's the long term. Then the short term is, well, current temporary hours at Green Hollow expire on August 1st. So the board in the short term needs to decide what will the hours be at Green Hollow starting on August 1st. And as part of that discussion, my proposal for the 32 hours was for 4 courts. My proposal was not for 2. There has been a suggestion that when that proposal goes on the table, how many hours will there be? That's a separate motion about short term, which is different than long term. So when the short term motion goes on, what hours do we want starting August 1st? Then that's the point at which the board and the public would decide with public input, do you want 4 courts or do you want 2 courts? And that would be part of that discussion for the short-term motion. So really there's 2 motions that'll be on the table. And Supervisor Abrams' motion is the long-term, that the board vote to fund new pickleball courts at Burnell and vote to fund a conversion of the courts at Green Hollow. That's long-term. And then the short-term is what do we do starting on August 1st?
Okay, Lenny, go ahead and unmute Lenny and see what his, Lenny, do you have follow-up? Unmute yourself. I'm not getting.
Thank you.
Okay, you're unmuted. Go ahead.
All right, I appreciate the clarification. I was not clear on the fact that there is a motion on the table, which is the long term, but we also expect there's going to be a short-term motion as well. And I'm not sure that it makes a lot of sense to separate those two. However, the long term, although I might not like it as a pickleball player, I think is reasonable in terms of, you're not taking anything away from, several members of the community. You're making things less convenient, but, you're not taking anything away. Now, on the other hand, the short term, the idea of a further reduction in hours, because we had basically open, unrestricted hours, and then currently we are limited, relative to the baseline that had existed, we are limited now in the number of hours. I would support the first speaker who basically said, hey, this is a, if the intent is to restrict based on volume, I don't really see the current justification for further reducing the hours or the number of courts, because, as a taxpayer, I have helped to fund the installation of those courts, which are being used in the manner as intended. And I think that there, has been a compromise made in terms of limiting those hours, and further limitation seems like a solution for a problem that may not exist. And so I think it's not a good, wise use of taxpayer money, nor is it a wise response to a community within our area, within our region, that is pursuing something that is a good thing. It's using a facility in the intended manner, in a respectful manner that benefits the health and wellness of many people, including several senior citizens. So I think that that's my opinion. Thank you
Okay.
for the opportunity.
Thank you, Lenny. Now, I have 4 people in line here to speak next. I have Marge F. First, then after that, Mary Bellman, after her, Dana Wilcox, and then Brandon McDonough. So, Marge, unmute yourself and you have the floor.
It's Alan Friedlander.
Hi, I'm Alan Friedlander.
Oh, Alan Friedlander. Okay, Alan, go ahead.
Yeah. I wanted to make a couple comments on the sound study data that was made available. When I compare the World Health Organization's recommendations on noise and nuisance and the partial results that they found on the study, it's very clear that the noise level is way, maybe one more way higher than is recommended, and by the World Health Organization. And it's one of those things that people might say, well, it's a nuisance, but so what, it's not so bad. But I will tell you that it is pretty bad. We lost our air conditioning for a couple weeks, and the windows have to be open, and I didn't feel well, so I was laying down, and that ping, ping, ping really can drive you crazy, physiologically, mentally, and psychologically. The results also bore out the fact that the orientation of the courts, pointing right towards the houses on Park Forest and some of the houses on Sierra, is the wrong orientation. It is much louder on the one monitor, the west monitor, than it was on the east monitor, because the noise just travels, along the hit lines of the paddles. So that my hope is the long term is converting back to tennis courts, and the way the tennis courts were arranged previously, they were turned at a 90-degree angle such that any noise from the tennis courts would be more pointed towards the bigger spaces between the houses. And so that's one thing. The other thing about the study is this study so far reinforces other studies and other recommendations, the 500 feet recommendation that was alluded to. And so I'm wondering if we could save some taxpayers money by saying, you know what, we have enough data. Even if the sound diminishes significantly, which I don't think it will from my own observations, 2 courts are not going to be that much different than 4 courts. And even if they were, the fact is, this proves that 4 courts is crazy too much to have in this park. And just to keep in mind, the reason that these neighbors surrounding the courts are fairly adamant that they be moved is because, it was a mistake to build them. They really are a nuisance. And it's a shame that neighbors don't have the convenience of playing here. But hopefully, in the long term, when the Burnell courts open up, they won't mind a 15, 20-minute drive, just as a consideration to neighbors who live right along the park. That's all I need to say, except for one other thing. I do think it's a false comparison to say, hey, what's more popular, pickleball or tennis, and what should we build next? I don't think it's crucial what we build next. The crucial thing is these courts should be removed. That's it for me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Next is Mary Bellman. Unmute yourself and go ahead, you have the floor.
Hi, thank you. Alan is one of my neighbors and said some of the things that I wanted to say. I wanted to respond to some of the comments that have been made and assure people that, in fact, the noise is still an issue. I believe I'm in one of those 15 homes within 500 feet, and Supervisor Teets can confirm or not. It has to do with the popping sound. It is too much to hear one ball, so it's not about volume or crowds, and we know this sport is popular. We know people will continue to come, and I also want to reiterate that, you know, as painful as some of you may find to be inconvenienced to have to go somewhere else, or that your taxpayer money was already spent on this project, it was also our taxpayer money, those of us who live within that 500 feet. And our own money was used to build something that never should have been built, particularly for the couple of homes that are 100 and some feet. I mean, and 500 feet is normally with noise abatement. We not only have no noise abatement, we have a hollow to echo that for us. So, you know, I appreciate that this is an inconvenience for some. And, you know, for those of us who live right there, yes, we all want the courts down, you know, 1 year ago, please. But I want to speak in support of the proposal, the long-term proposal, because we really need a long-term solution to not, you know, it's not about the popularity, the wonderful attributes of pickleball. Although I'm not a player, I also don't play tennis. I wish I could, you know, say I was going to play tennis, but I don't. The question is really, is this park appropriate for pickleball? And I think it's quite clear that it is not. So pickleball is wonderful, needs to be played somewhere else where it's not 100 feet from someone's home. And if you're not that person, I don't think you should, you know, get on and say that, you know, you're too inconvenienced to have to go somewhere else. That's not the kind of neighborhood that I think we want to have. And I've been really, you know, pleased with the way that our supervisors have listened to the residents who are impacted severely, which is quite different than I think, you know, pickleballers who've come to appreciate these courts and obviously want to continue to play in them because they're convenient and they're great. But it's not the equivalent for us. And truly, we're not making this up, right? Again, we've invited many of you over to try to sit outside our homes. We would certainly not be asking to spend our taxpayer dollars to fix this by reverting the courts back and building more pickleball courts somewhere else. So I want to speak and, you know, be clear that those of us who are most impacted are in favor of a long-term solution. We'll probably quibble over the short term because, you know, that will be painful, but I really support the effort to do this long-term transition. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bellman, for your comments. Next is Dana Wilcox. Go ahead and unmute yourself, and you have the floor.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to thank you for allowing us to speak. When you look at places in the world like what's going on in Cuba, the fact that we can all just kind of freely talk and be kind and civil is pretty awesome. So I just want to say thank you all for all your efforts with that. I think my kind of biggest concern is I live in Patton Township. I walk to these courts. I love playing at Green Hollow. I am, you know, I would consider myself a semi-neighborhood resident. The fact that I can walk there is important to me. So I would not like to see it go away. I think it's, you know, not even, it's just the fact that it's just greener for me to be able to walk along with others who also live in Patton Township and are able to walk. The other thing I'm kind of concerned about is the precedent it sets to say, you know, well, this is loud, it should go. I can hear the swim meets at the pool, at the Park Forest pool. I wonder if we say, well, it's loud for the residents, then, you know, the residents on Douglas, what happens when they say, this pool's too loud, this swim meet's too loud, these kids are too loud. I mean, it just kind of sets, I mean, that's what parks and recreation are for. I mean, this is where you go and you don't have to use like your inside voices. We tell kids, like, have fun at the pool, be yourself, you know, run around. I understand that a ping is loud or could be loud But I think that there's also things that people enjoy that are loud. For example, if you go to Spring Creek Park and you go tubing, I mean, those houses are right there. I think that those residents could easily say, this is bothersome to me. I don't want kids to tube here anymore. On Bristol Avenue, or, which I know isn't in Patton Township, there's a Little League field that uses announcers for every single game across the street from an elder care facility or elder care residence home. So it's just kind of, to me, like, what happens is just going to be a domino effect. We say one neighborhood thinks this is too loud, the next neighborhood thinks this is too loud. Then, I mean, I just think it's a real dangerous precedent. And, I think that there's definitely compromise in communities and neighborhoods, and that's how things work best in this country. And I don't understand why we would just fold and take away this opportunity, just so people aren't inconvenienced for 2 hours a day. So thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you for your comment. Next is Brandon McDonough and then Megan Blair Simpson. So Brandon, go ahead, unmute yourself and go ahead. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Trevino, for giving me the time to talk tonight. I'd like to thank the board for their attention at this matter, and I'd also like to say I'm really proud of our neighbors here around Green Hollow, the way that they've come together and handled this issue respectfully and thoughtfully. The time that Alan Freelander and Steve Garcia and Mary Bellman have put into this. When people speak about it as being an inconvenience, it really downplays the level of noise that the residents have had to deal with around Green Hollow. When you compare it to an announcer at a Little League game or the crowd at a swim meet, those they're exceptions to the rule. At that Little League field or the swimming pool, when the courts were being used at peak play, it was exceeding 12 hours with 4 courts being played at. I will be the first to admit that since the Y has opened, play has gone down, but as Alan Freelander can attest to, if one court is in use, the sound volume doesn't really change. It doesn't change if they're novice or experts. It doesn't matter if it's one person practicing their serve with no one playing and hitting the ball. The noise is the noise. So I would like to speak in support of the long-term solution to move the courts to Burnell. I think that providing the recreational activity at a place where there isn't neighborhoods, I think is an awesome idea. I'd like to thank the support of Central CRPR for the work that they've done in looking into that. With respect to the short-term solution, I wanted to speak a little bit to the 2 courts versus 4 courts. Again, the issue of the noise has come up in multiple meetings now. I think for the neighbors around the park, the noise was at its absolute worst in the spring before the leaf canopy filled. We've talked about no noise abatement. That the leaf foliage around the park serves as kind of a natural noise abatement. I know it's going to be a longer-term solution to build out at Burnell Park. My concern is really for the spring of 22, when the weather breaks and the crowds come back out and flood and fill the Y, and also come out and use 4 courts again at Green Hollow. We have seen this reduction with the hours and the reduction with some of the people playing over at the Y, but the courts are still being utilized. It doesn't matter if it's 3 hours in the morning and 3 hours in the evening and not heat of the day. It still is a detriment to where someone can't open their windows or have dinner out on their deck. So I would like to see it go from 4 courts to 2 courts, starting in spring of 22 would be my recommendation to the board, because as everybody knocks the dust off and comes out from winter and wants to participate in recreational activity, we're lacking that natural noise abatement of the leaves. And that really was, for the people that are not immediately court adjacent, it was the worst in the spring. So thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Next is Megan Blair Simpson. Go ahead.
Hi, I'll be brief. Thank you. Thank you for having this discussion, and thank you, supervisors, for listening to the community members for so long on this issue. I just wanted to say that my husband and I, he's here somewhere, my family, we're in enthusiastic support of this long-term proposal, and I'm only speaking to the long-term proposal right now. And I live on Hampshire Circle, and I've been walking to Green Hollow Park from my home to play tennis with my family for 17 years, until one day I walked in there with my tennis racket and there were these pickleball courts. And it was a huge reduction in the quality of my life and of my family's lives. So I just want to speak to one facet of this multifaceted controversy. I agree with all of the reasons that have been spoken about why this long-term proposal is a good idea. I just want to make sure that part of that reason is we want our tennis courts back in Green Hollow. So that's all I wanted to say. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you for your comments. We have a member present who's speaking.
Hi, Bo Barbaro. I'm one of the organizers at the Y for Pickleball. And just a couple of points. We have a group now playing at the Y from 6:30 in the morning to 8:30 a.m. For the reason of their jobs, getting off to work. Then we have a group that comes from 8 to about 10:30, 11 in the morning. There's another group from 1 to 3. And then we have some new players who are coming at 5. So it's been very nice. But I'm with pretty much confidence, I could say about 85% of those players are Y members. I don't think you're going to see a big influx and people moving to Green Hollow when August comes. But I think all of our opinions are great, to hear people's opinions, but I think the facts is that might be what we're missing on this. So I think a great idea would be to do an organized survey in August of Green Hollow and the number of players, and just maybe the first week assign people, someone goes at 10 o'clock and gets a count, someone goes at noon. I think that would be really helpful, because I think a big part of this problem has been solved by the opening of the Y courts. And the other thing, and it might be a question directly to Pam, I'm not sure, but I think a survey of the tennis courts, take another week to survey how many players are using those tennis courts. And then I think we can move forward. So thank you. Those are my only comments tonight.
All right, thank you for your comments. Don't see anyone, hands raised.
Wanted to clarify what this long-term solution we're talking about. In my mind, too many things in government, unfortunately, take longer than we'd like them to. And what I have in mind is to make this long-term change as short a period as possible. In other words, if we passed a motion today, I'd like to see us accept bids for the new building of the new courts, whatever they're going to be, as soon as possible. I don't think of it as being a long-term thing, because all that just drags out existing problems and doesn't solve the problem as quickly as we can. So that's what I have in mind.
Okay, anyone else wish to speak? Go ahead. Identify yourself, please.
Yeah, my name is Al Renato, and I'm a pickleball player at the Green Hollow courts. And I just had some questions for the board, first of all, because I wanted to Bo's previous statement, as well as previous speakers, I do think there's an element here of a problem that doesn't exist. And I'm new to this issue, so please excuse me if I am saying things that I should know the answers to, but what's the nature of the August 1st deadline?
The nature of it?
Yes, the nature. Why is there an August 1st deadline? Because from what I understand, the noise study, the before noise study is completed, but there's been no after noise study once we get to the August timeframe, because at that point, to the extent that pickleball players aren't a member of the Y, that would be the time they revert back to Green Hollow. And that's when the after noise study will take place. So what's the nature of the August 1st?
The board meeting on May 26th, when we agreed to establish or limit the number of hours of play, it was passed as a temporary measure with an August 1st termination. And because we knew we'd be discussing this over the next couple of months.
Right.
And tonight we are.
But do we think that the August 1st deadline makes sense? I guess my point is the August 1st deadline to me feels like an unnecessary and artificial deadline that is forcing the board to make a decision without the data required to make said decision, i.e. the after the free period at the Y ends. Do you have a response to that?
I think my sense of what the proposal is that Supervisor Tees was that we're going to set we're going to discuss whether we're going to set another extension of limited play, maybe modifying it or not, up to November 1st. So it's still an ongoing process.
Okay.
And the noise study will resume, like second week of August or something like that, giving time for those players who are utilizing the free play at the Y for this month.
So is the board planning to make what we're calling a short-term decision?
Yes.
After that, after the after noise study is done?
The purpose of the noise study would be presented to the supervisors for us to consider whether there's something else we need to do to change or maintain or
So I've misunderstood. There actually isn't an August 1st deadline.
The August 1st was the end of the initial temporary reduction of hours.
Okay. So something has to happen on August 1st.
Today we can decide. The board may say,
Okay.
we could limit play starting tomorrow.
Got it.
Or remove the limits to play starting tomorrow. We haven't had that discussion yet among the board members.
Okay. Understood. Thank you.
Yeah.
And then the Supervisor Tees mentioned that there are 15 houses that fall within that noise zone. And I guess the question for her, as well as any of the other respective supervisors, is have the 15 houses within that zone, have they been contacted? Or do we have any kind of survey or any kind of data on what percentage of those 15 houses, tenants, real estate owners have an actual complaint?
No.
Is there a reason we don't have that data? That would seem relevant to me.
Nobody's asked for it. We've accepted comments from anybody who'd like to make comments, so.
Mm-hmm. Is that something the board would consider? Data from the 15 houses that fall in the zone?
Mr. Chair, I would ask the speaker to get all his questions out, take his time, and then you can decide whether you want to answer them or not. Instead of going in a back and forth, which you haven't done with the other speakers.
Well, the back and forth is, I think, more helpful to all members of the community, as long as I stay within the 5-minute timeline. I prefer that. But if we just want to ask questions and then I guess you get back to us, that's up to you guys.
So,
Mr. Chair.
would you give us some more questions you want answered? So one is the survey.
Yeah, a survey of those residents.
Of the immediate neighbors.
Yeah.
What's your other question?
While you're coming up with that one, I think that the reason 15 is arbitrary because they're within 500 feet. And
Right.
So if we're going to use 500 feet as a criterion,
Yep.
that's why 15 houses. You don't necessarily need to ask them if they're terribly annoyed, a little bit annoyed, somewhat annoyed, or not annoyed. But if we're going to go by that standard, whatever standard it is, you need to know how many houses are within that standard. That's all that's been done with that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then I guess another issue that I think is relevant too is, it does feel like there's a trade being made in the long-term solution, which is trading Green Hollow for Burnell Park. And I think that access should just be a point that the board considers. Burnell Park is, Green Hollow is accessible by bus, by walking, by bike. The population density around Green Hollow is significant. And those residents have easy access to Green Hollow. Burnell Park doesn't fit that criteria. And it's far away and it requires use of an automobile. One other thing that I think is worth pointing out is that there seems to be this, and a previous speaker, Ms. Wilcox, made this point, there seems to be this expectation that parks are supposed to be noiseless. And I just wanted on the record that is, to me, doesn't make a whole lot of sense. With what everybody's been through over the last year, I think it's become very clear how important public and green spaces are to the community. And I think that pickleball has, I'm not going to go as far as to say save lives, but it's given people an outlet to be outside and be part of a community in a distant way where otherwise the courts were just basically sitting there unused. I know people have said that they play tennis there, but I think the tennis usage there was nil, somewhere close to zero. So I think it's just important to recognize the importance of public spaces to the public. And it's, obviously everybody feels badly that pickleball is not a noise-free sport, and we all sympathize with the houses that are close, but at the same time, these are public parks that are meant for the public. And when you purchase real estate or rent real estate in an area that's near or adjacent to a park, you're doing so with the expectation that people make noises in parks. So that's it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments. Supervisor Tees, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Yes, I think it is wonderful, everyone who is bringing their comments and their perception. I hear very different perceptions of the issue. And I hear folks, again, my basic question is, what parks are appropriate for pickleball? And so am I to presume that everyone who is speaking in favor of continuing pickleball there believes that Green Hollow Park, with its unique physical characteristics, with its amplification of noise that is very difficult to abate, and with the positioning of the courts, and with residents who have come on tonight to say this is something that is part of their daily lives. Do I understand everybody who is speaking for continuing pickleball in that park believes that Green Hollow is appropriate for parks? And or that Green Hollow is appropriate for pickleball. I believe the township function, yes, we need to provide parks and our tax monies and noise can be a part of parks, but I think a township function is to identify what amenities are appropriate for which parks. Would you put a skate park in there? Would you, farther out, would you have a rifle range? We need to look at the particular amenity and the particular park. I think that is a township planning function. And, but I hear folks offering your very wonderful perspectives, but I hear you not listening to one another. I hear the residents who are not only on the border of this Green Hollow, but within other blocks, Norwood, we've heard from them at previous meetings, saying the noise is more than usual or what you would expect in a park. I don't hear them, if they're being heard, they're being dismissed. And so the challenge, and what I'm hearing them say almost pleadingly is, neighbors, please, would you go to the inconvenience of going to Burnell Road Park? Because being in Green Hollow is a major interference in our lives. I wanted to share, and to the previous gentleman's point about it sounds like a trade, I was very impressed and supportive of parts of a letter that Pickleball Ambassador Drew Von Tisch wrote to the Board of Supervisors on July the 1st. Well, he wrote one on July 5 too, also asking that the court in the short term keep adequate hours to play for pickleball, and that's a short term issue. But in the July 1st letter that he wrote to us, and you can see it online. I know it's hard to find some of our letters with our website being modified and everything, but it's online. He said, in my opinion, the perfect world scenario would be to build 3 or 4 new courts at Burnell Park. A next best solution might involve a trade scenario where 2 courts in Burnell used for tennis were converted into 4 pickleball courts. In turn, the 4 pickleball courts in Green Hollow are returned to tennis. He writes, let's pursue a solution where everybody wins: tennis players, Park Forest residents, and pickleball players. I thank Mr. Von Tisch. I think he expressed it well. I believe that Supervisor Abrams' proposal for the long-term solution is exactly that. And as we move forward, I would hope we could go first to discussing the motion that's on the table that Mr. Abrams has rendered for long-term solution, and then move to any motions for short-term solutions. Thank you.
We have a member of the public raised her hand, Emily Kwok. Go ahead and unmute yourself, and you have the floor.
Hi, my name is Lyndon, actually. I'm using my daughter's account.
Okay.
But I actually live in a pickleball and tennis family, and I'm probably one of the few members in the community. I live in Patton Township. I probably know where every tennis court is, and the street parking is horrible. But these people play pickleball in the residential parks. And this is a convenience for us. I mean, Burnell is very hard to get to. It's right next to the airport. It's not like you can ride a bike there. And the Green Hollow is right next, you can easily access it, different transportation that you may have. That's all I wanted to add.
Okay, thank you for your comment. Any other comments from the public? Anyone wishes to make? Raise your hand. If you don't know the raise your hand feature on Zoom, you can turn on your video and just start waving. Crazy, get attention, and we'll recognize you. All right. I am now, then, since we don't have any other public comments, I'm going to close the public comments section of this agenda item. And now the Board of Supervisors will have a discussion about the motion that was made. May I make a suggestion that I think my sense is that the long-term proposal to convert tennis courts in Burnell Road Park to pickleball courts now is probably going to be approved. So can we take that section of the motion first and have a discussion? Would, besides Anita and Elliot, any other supervisor wish to comment on that long-term proposal? Pam or Betsy?
Actually, can I just say before we make our comments, can you read the motion again, please?
Yeah, Elliot's calling it up on his screen here.
I call and it does not appear. Just a second. I'll have to paraphrase rather than reading it.
Yeah,
because-
get close to the mic so people.
That the board would decide to fund new pickleball courts at Burnell Road Park. And when they're completed, the pickleball courts would be converted to they would be converted to tennis courts, but that work would not be done until their new courts were available. That's the basic proposal. And while it's called long-term, hopefully, it can be arranged to have the funding and the bids go out as quickly as practicable.
Is that clear enough, Betsy?
Yes, thank you. So do I have the floor now? Is that okay? Okay. So I've got notes all over the place. I have fake teeth in, so you'll have to apologize if things come out a little disjointed. The first thing I want to speak to is...
They're not adjusting tuition.
Oops, we got a mute problem here. Mike, somebody, whatever, thanks. Somebody cut that. So the first thing I want to say is I support the motion as described. I would make a slight amendment when we get down to the nitty-gritty that we consider having the tennis courts in Green Hollow dual lined. But that, again, that's the nitty-gritty. And again, my comments are kind of be not necessarily in order. For all pickleball, and I especially like the fact that the decision to do the work on the Burnell Park roads actually must be completed before we do any work on the Green Hollow courts, because I think that we do want to serve citizens in a balanced way, and this allows pickleball to continue at Green Hollow until pickleball courts are set up at Burnell Park. I do also want to speak to the fact that for all the concern about reducing hours or taking down nets at Green Hollow, I do want to remind everybody that there are 4 pickleball courts currently up at Burnell Road Park. They are the dual line courts. And in fact, in a letter that we got, I think from Drew Von Tisch, which detailed the history of pickleball in this area, that at times when, before Green Hollow existed as pickleball courts, that there were sometimes up to 30 people playing up at Burnell Park. Now, I understand that those are not ideal courts, but not a perfect world, and those courts are available. And I want to thank Ms. Salakangas right now for putting on a fast track the mounting of the wind screens at the Burnell Park roads. I did go out to Burnell Park, and it's beautifully windy, but that makes it hard to play pickleball and tennis. And the other thing I want to do is I want to take taxpayer dollars off the table, please. You know, boy, since the time we've been collecting taxes, we all know that some of the money is spent wisely and some of the money is not. And I think we can count any number of, especially military projects. I read of the one in Afghanistan that was put there and was actually never used. That was $25 million. I won't go into any details. And also the fact that many of the taxpayer dollars are spent on things that we do want, and we all have our preferences. So let's level that playing field. I'd also like to acknowledge the fact that governments are made up of people, and like all people everywhere, we are not perfect. If I knew in 2017 when we were asked to convert or to place pickleball courts in Green Hollow, if I knew then what I know now, I would have said no. Regarding the precedent set, regarding the noise of pickleball in other communities, actually, I think I'll address the latter first. So, Google's my friend. If I if I search for noise in pickleball, goodness, I get, not just, a page of entries, I get pages of entries. And likewise, if I Google one of the pickleball courts in question, I used to live in Chestnut Hill, near Chestnut Hill. And I know there's a court there that is maybe 50 feet from row houses, and indeed there are a lot of complaints there. I don't know how they settled them, but there are numerous articles on that. So I think noise is a very difficult thing, and yes, there can be a slippery slope there. However, I think it's also cultural, and I think a decision about the noise perceived by neighbors in Green Hollow, and I think Supervisor Tease has expressed this very well, as Mary Bellman, that the supervisors are actually making a decision about the culture in Park Forest. Park Forest is a very cohesive neighborhood. It exudes calmness and park and so on. And I like the comment, I think that it was Brandon McDonough, complimenting the neighbors in Park Forest who have pulled together and supported each other on this. It speaks to the culture of the people who live in Park Forest. They're very concerned about what other people think. So perhaps there are other neighborhoods who maybe are not bothered by the noise or are not pulling together. Who knows what's going on at the township meetings in Chestnut Hill or the borough meetings in Chestnut Hill. And if people are satisfied there, as I think we are going to be here. And actually, when I say satisfied, I am looking for 50% of the people to be angry at this decision and 50% to be pleased with it, because I think then we have met what I intend to do, which is find a solution that pleases, 50% of the people. I think that we're doing, or otherwise, maybe 100% of the people are going to disapprove, which means that we probably really have done a good job, that we've compromised well. I also want, in terms of the location at Burnell, and yes, I realize there's not public transit out there, but in terms of convenience, I would first like to say that I would bet that very few people take public transit to Park Forest. I would just bet, which is why we had a traffic issue and cars parking. And I would also point out that, yes, while reducing greenhouse gas emissions is critical, I really think that people are going to be driving to the pickleball course no matter where they are. And that I might point out in terms of the location at Burnell Park is actually going to be, if you look at the center region as a whole, Burnell Park is actually much more convenient to the majority of people who live in the center region. And I have anecdotal evidence that the Green Hollow Park was being used by people who lived in Boalsburg, State College. Many people did not live in Park Forest themselves. In fact, I think maybe a handful of people walked there. So I would guess everybody else drove there. So Burnell Park, in fact, would be a very convenient location as all concerns. So that is all of the points that I can find in my notes right now. I may have some other points that I locate in a few minutes. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Betsy. Pam, do you have comments?
Yes, I would like to agree with Elliot on his proposal and in support. And also I would like to thank all the residents, pickleball players, and all of their comments, and to really let them know that this board has taken in consideration and listened and read every letter, every email that has come through to us, and that we are taking our time to make sure that we hear you all and we try as human beings to make the right decision here. There is no easy answer. As it started, a lot of the comments came about the board, and two of our members, the Board of Supervisors, are new, including myself, and wasn't in the original decision. But we have taken the time, effort to make sure we heard you. We researched it. We're still researching it. And we're moving on it. I also would like to thank Mr. Garcia in bringing up the ADA situation that we weren't in compliance, and we worked on it and we got it done. So as we move forward, regardless of whatever decision this board makes, please know it is in the best interest of our community. And we are here to work together, not apart. There are no easy answers tonight, but as we move forward to the long-term decision, and as we look forward to an answer for short-term, please know that we are all trying to work together and resolve this issue in a respectable, a professional, and legal matter. So I thank you, and as we move forward, and would like to vote.
Okay, any follow-ups from Mr. Abrams or Ms. Tees? All right, so what we're going to vote on here is just part of the motion, which is the long-term solution that Elliot elaborated on of building pickleball courts in Burnell Road Park as soon as possible. I assume that's taking out, what, one tennis court, two tennis courts? What are you proposing? What do you have?
Well, we do have an area where we could put in brand-new courts without interrupting any of the tennis.
How does that impact on the development plan? Because those were already assigned.
To tennis, but they haven't been built.
I understand.
Yeah.
Is it, that it's not an issue?
It's not an issue with the board, it's not an issue with anybody
Okay.
else.
I'd like to see it that way.
So you prefer putting them in
That they
the
be-
undeveloped part where there were going to be tennis courts in phase 2?
Well, they weren't in phase 2, they're not in a phase. There's an area we just graded out for some future phase.
In other words,
that's-
we're moving this will be a new phase that will start
Okay.
immediately, but.
Okay,
for a
how many
different
courts can we
We
put in
could
that?
put 3 courts in there.
It'll be 3 pickleball courts.
I think we estimated a cost about $115,000, probably add
Yeah.
another 20% to that for
Right, we have a probable
ancillary
cost
costs.
opinion of that. If you're going to build brand-new 3 courts, it's probable cost opinion of $115,000, which are this year's figures.
Yeah. And can we have wind screens on the fences?
They would be, the design includes a higher
Yeah.
fence on the upwind side with wind screens, which would be higher than would be required, which would be on the same length of fencing that they're putting in wind screens on the tennis courts,
Okay.
which comes up slope. That was part of the design, preliminary design.
Okay, Anita, you have comment?
I believe if the 2 current dual-lined tennis pickleball courts are converted to 4 pickleball courts, that would be less money, would it not? I understand the Park District does not prefer that, but I think there's quite a financial difference, is there not, Susan Wheeler?
There is. Actually, we did look at the cost to convert one of the tennis courts to either 3 or 4 pickleball, and that, I believe, was in the range of $32,000 or something like that. But we'd also have to put internal fencing to separate the pickleball from the tennis courts, so there would be no conflict in play. But I could confirm those numbers, but we did look at those numbers as something we discussed at the Pickleball Advisory Committee.
So for converting 2 of the tennis courts to 4 pickleball courts at Burnell, it'd be $32,000.
Well, I was saying one
So it'd be
tennis court.
$64,000?
one tennis
Pardon me?
court to 4 pickleball. You can put 4 pickleball courts on 1 tennis court.
Oh, so you could get 4 pickleball courts on one of the Burnell Road courts for how much? 32,000?
We looked at that and in addition to that, the cost of putting up internal fencing to the outside exterior fencing, but I would have to check those numbers and make sure that they're still valid.
So
Around
so we
30,000.
It's
we could
around
get-
30,000, because the
So we
surface,
get so the township could get 4 pickleball courts on one of the tennis courts for 40,000 compared to 3 pickleball courts for 115,000. I understand the Park District doesn't like our idea of converting one of those tennis courts, but I think that is because they already have the foundation surface laid. I would, if, you know, we're getting into the weeds here about specifically which proposal we're funding, I would prefer the conversion of the existing tennis court.
what we can do is actually get a better probable cost estimate for
Well,
that.
we're not gonna get them before tonight, so forth.
No,
so.
well, we won't get it before tonight, but we can certainly have that information, so then you have the
Yeah.
opportunity to choose.
Let's
Oh,
let the
Betsy
board
had her hand
talk
up
and
first.
decide.
Okay, Betsy, you're next, and then Elliot.
Thank you. I had a bit of a distraction here. I was going to make the point initially when there was talk of the conversion of the already leveled field and turning it into 3 brand new pickleball courts, that I would actually like to see a minimum of 4 pickleball courts. I think that's a critical mass for the spirit of pickleball, which is highly social, and there's a lot of what I call pickup pickleball, where people show up and play. And I think 4 is important for that. I really like the cost of converting the pickleball courts and converting 1 tennis court to 4 pickleball courts. And I think that in the spirit of everything that Patton Township is doing on the pickleball effort, that perhaps another municipality in the center region would actually really like to have some pickleball courts in their township. I see it as a benefit, but I also see a benefit of spending $32,000 versus $115,000. I understand that Pam Salakangas, who does a great job at the Center Region Parks and Recs, would like to have that bank of tennis courts at Burnell Park, but perhaps there's another park in the center region, or I should say another municipality, that would go out on a limb and put up either a bank of tennis courts or, yeah, whatever. So that's my comment.
Okay, Elliot, go ahead.
I can see the obvious advantage of the lower cost. I'd want to make sure that our resident pickleball experts would be totally comfortable with what the product would be if we did a conversion. If it's equally playable and equally desirable, then sure, let's spend less money. But if it's going to be something that isn't going to be used and it's going to be a problem, then we're going to be spending the other money again at some other time when it's more money. And I would, in the scale of things, what did we just spend on fixing up the Burnell Road intersection with Fox Hollow? What was the?
Well, we only spent 150.
Only. Well, it was $150,000, but
$1.7
that
million project.
intersection makes it much safer now to get to Burnell Road Park from town than it had been, and it was a good investment of the $150,000.
Okay.
So I'll vote for either one, but I kind of think the dedicated pickleball, since that's the growth sport right now, I'd go for that. But if it means that the proposal would go down, I'll vote for either one.
We could actually do both. We could convert 1 tennis court now to pickleball and then use the section that hasn't been developed yet. We could put additional pickleball courts there as
Great
well.
idea.
Anita, one more comment,
Yeah,
and then
Mr.
we're going to vote. Go
Yes.
ahead.
correspondence that I believe Mr. Von Tisch has sent to the township, he has offered to offer his ideas on how the Burnell Road conversion of tennis courts to pickleball could be done. So I think that I like Supervisor Abrams' suggestion to be sure that what is done meets the needs of the pickleball players. I think Mr. Von Tisch would be very willing, from what he had said in a prior letter, to be among the consultants that the township might resource in terms of identifying criteria for whoever lays the sealer over the tennis court. He was explaining the process to me. So,
Okay, my
Mr.
sense.
Chair, what do you need in this terms of this motion? Do you need a specific of where the court will happen?
I think we should do that. We're talking about it right now. Let's decide. So my sense is that, from what I'm hearing, most of you are in favor of the more immediate solution, which is converting a tennis court over to 4 pickleball courts. That could occur much faster than building from scratch, from ground zero, 3 new pickleball courts. Is that my sense? Anybody object to that? Is the motion? Okay, let's vote then. All in favor of conversion of 1 tennis court in Burnell Road Park to 4 pickleball courts? Raise your hand, say aye.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Mr. Chair, part of that motion also talks about funds for the converting the pickleball to tennis at Green Hollow.
Eventually,
So
after the
right, the
Burnell
motion is
Park.
stated,
Yeah.
so we just need to mention that.
Okay, anyone wish to comment on that part of the motion before we vote?
I think that's part of the motion.
Yeah, it is, but
It is part of the motion.
we didn't really have a discussion about it.
Right, we just need to make sure it's on the table.
Personally, this is just my personal preference. I think we should keep some pickleball at Green Hollow Park, but I don't have an objection if the board majority feels that we should go remove the pickleball from Green Hollow eventually and convert it back to tennis. So,
If I might,
go ahead.
might I point out at this point, just to make things simpler for us tonight, that converting the pickleball to tennis does not preclude dual striping. And so I think the motion, as Mr. Abrams stated it, is that we are going to convert at Green Hollow the 4 pickleball to 2 tennis courts. So we can vote on that, and we can decide at a later point whether we're going to dual stripe, which would effectively allow pickleball at Green Hollow.
All right, everybody understand now? The motion includes 2 components. One is putting pickleball courts into Burnell Park now, and the second part of the motion is to, at some point in the future, convert Green Hollow Park pickleball courts back to tennis. Okay, all those in favor of that motion, raise your hand, say aye.
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 Everyone voted aye, so the motion carries unanimous. Thank you. Then the next discussion will be the short-term solutions that were proposed by Elliot and Anita, which are to...
Anita did a fantastic job on these, by the way.
Thank you. To further reduce the hours of current play at Green Hollow pickleball courts back to, so a total of 32 hours per week, with hours of play at 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. Saturday and Sunday, and from 9 to noon, or you said 9 to noon or 10 to 1, so which is it? 9 to noon or 10 to 1 or 9 to 1? What is it?
Well, if it was up to me, I'd have a survey done as soon as possible of the people who would be playing there and adjust the hours based on what we find from that.
Okay, so you're not proposing a reduction in hours?
I don't know, I may be, but it could be we can reduce them even more if we find that if everybody likes to play at a certain time, that shouldn't be the time we close it.
No, I agree with that, but let me hear comments from the board about the reduction in hours of play. Betsy, go ahead.
Might I suggest that if we word the motion of the 10 to 5 on Saturday and Sunday, and then no playing on Monday and Friday, courts closed Monday and Friday, and that on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, we have 2 3-hour sessions, all 3 days, the courts are open. We can vote on that, and that would still allow Mr. Abrams, and I think Ms. Tees also suggested taking a poll of the players to find out which, the exact placement of those 6 hours per day.
So it sounds like we can't make established hours of play until after we get results from the survey. Is that what you're suggesting?
Well, we can establish number of hours
Yeah,
for play. We can certainly vote on 6 hours, but perhaps not the
so
exact
what are the hours tomorrow
schedule.
is what I'm asking. If they're going to play tomorrow, what are the hours?
Yeah, well, it's not August 1st yet. So the hours that we established in May can bear up.
What about no play on Mondays and Fridays? Are you suggesting we establish that now or wait till August 1st?
No, I was going to suggest August 1st.
Okay.
However, I would suggest that we, whatever we do, because we want to have some flexibility in determining the specific schedule of the hours on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, that we wait until August 1st
Any
to
comments?
implement any hours we're voting on.
Okay. Yes, Elliot, go ahead.
Is there any chance we could make it August 8th or 15th and have a target of collecting some data prior to making that final determination, rather than having to make 2 determinations within the same month?
Elliot, are you speaking, excuse me?
Yeah, Anita, go ahead.
Are you speaking of determination from the noise studies?
Well, from whatever studies we're doing, I don't know whether a lot of people like to play on Mondays or Tuesdays or Thursday or Friday. And so arbitrarily saying it's closed Monday and Friday, it's arbitrary. And of course, we could divide the hours differently so that the hours are shorter, but it's open each day. I don't know if that's right. And so if we can quickly determine with a survey, and there are methods of doing this quickly, that's what we could go by, and our Recreation Advisory Committee group can look at the survey results and give us a recommendation.
Susan, when is the next Recreation Advisory Committee meeting? Not this month, but in August.
Oh, in August? It's the third Tuesday in August. We're meeting next week for the July meeting, and the meeting after that would be the third.
It's the day before the next board meeting.
Third Tuesday.
Look how fast they did that study.
17th, yeah.
The August meeting will be August 17th.
So you're suggesting we consult, we do the survey, the advisory committee will review the results and make a recommendation back to the board that we'll consider at our board meeting the next day? Is that
I think that's what could do. Look how quickly they came up with a study of all the parks and where we shouldn't have it. That was done in, what, a day or two?
Mr. Chair, go ahead, Anita.
Anita, go ahead.
Since the signs on the Green Hollow courts say that those hours are expiring August 1st, I would like to put this on the table for consideration, that we vote to establish 32 hours effective August 1st to November 1st, because then winter comes and you might want to reconsider timing. With our proposal, keeping the weekend hours 10 to 5, having 6 hours on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, I would say 10 to 1, since we heard from Rich, who plays from 11 to 1. Make those Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday hours 10 to 1 and 4 to 7, and the weekend hours 10 to 5, that we vote to establish that on August 1st. But meanwhile, we also put up a doodle or Survey Monkey poll that Park Forest pickleball players can, and residents, not just pickleball players, but and residents who might not play pickleball can weigh in on, are those hours, is that how they would like the configuration of 32 hours? And I would keep it for 4 courts. I know the Park District's recommended 2. I've heard tonight some of the pickleball players really want to keep 4. I know the residents would prefer not to have 4, but, and we've had the 64 hours versus 0 hours. We meet in the middle for 32 hours. But I would like to see us actually establish hours that will go up on August 1st when the temporary hours are over. But it gives the community a chance if they say, oh my gosh, we really would prefer instead of Tuesday to have Monday. And so amendments could be made afterwards, but let's get the new hours up for August 1st. That would be my proposal.
If that's a motion, I'll second it.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, yes.
Hold on, Betsy, hold on. Pam had her hand raised before you. Pam, go ahead.
Sorry about that. Sorry, Pam.
No problem. I agree. And what I was thinking was to give us time and to give the residents and the pickleball players time to address the new time limit after August 1st. We can't just change it overnight. We cannot do that. We have to give this information time to get out so it'll be fair across the board, both residents, pickleball players, that they know what's going on. To change it as soon as possible before August 1st is null and void. So I would say, let us get the word out, if we can put it on our website, whatever. But we need that any changes be after August.
Okay, Betsy?
Sorry, I was also going to say that, yes, I totally agree with Anita, and I know we're going to vote on that in a second. Let's not let the perfect get in the way of the good. And plus, we can always add a sign that says, if these hours don't work for your schedule, you are welcome to go to Burnell Park, with our apologies that it's not the perfect pickleball conditions, but that within a year probably will be. So I guess we can vote, yeah.
Okay, so my understanding of the motion now is, as amended or whatever, starting August 1st, that the hours of play will consist of Saturday and Sunday, the hours will be 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. And on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, hours would be 10 to 1 and 4 to 7. And no pickleball play on Monday or Friday. That starts August 1st, expires, temporary hours expire on November 1, and we can revisit that before November 1, after we get the results of the survey. Is that my understanding of what you're voting for? Okay, everyone seems to be okay with that, so all in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Everyone voted aye, so motion carries. And my understanding from a couple of comments is no one is on the board is proposing removing any nets and to keep the 4 courts active during this period of August 1st through November 1st. Is that seems to be consensus?
Yes.
Yes. And Mr. Chair, are we going to prepare a doodle poll or a survey monkey?
Yes, yeah.
Susan
Yes, we
Wheeler
are.
does the best surveys, to consult with them on putting it on a website for current pickleball players and residents of Patton Township.
Yeah, so we're directing our manager and our director of special projects and public works to assist, compose a survey and then collect data and report back to us. All right?
We'll start working on that.
Did we miss anything on pickleball?
Nope, I think that covers it.
It covers it. All right, we still have one more item on the agenda, number 4, the bid award for Green Hollow ADA Access Phase 1. Doug, go ahead.
I'm gonna let Susan do this, probably, do this.
Oh,
Yes, maybe what I'll do is just share the screen just to give you an idea of the project. But as you know, we were not ADA compliant in Green Hollow Park, and so we've been working with our design professional to have ADA access into the park. We've split it into 2 different phases. This year, we've put out the bid for Phase 1, which if you look at the drawing here, this is Park Forest Avenue, and this is the existing very steep slope that goes down into the bottom of the park. So the path winds its way through here, and it has 2 stages where we have places for a bench and also an accessible path for wheelchairs to be able to stop on their way down to the path, and it ends down near the drinking fountain. There's also will be an ADA parking space put up here at Park Forest Avenue near Laurel Lane. We went to bid. Bids were open on June 18. The range was $43,050 to $68,585. The low bid, which was $43,050, was EB Paving. And we would like to award that bid. They'll do the construction this year with substantial completion to be done finished by October 15. And the remainder of the pass, which will go and link the rest of the amenities to that path system, which you can see here is a circular path that goes around the ball field and has spurs that goes off to the pickleball courts and the playground and the basketball court and the climbing equipment and the swings. It is a project that we'll fully design and bid out this year for next year's construction.
okay, any questions? Anita has her hand raised. Go ahead, Anita.
No, sorry, I was having trouble seeing the sketch, but I can check it in the handout. Thank you. No, I'm good.
Pam Salkangas, yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just asking if that sketch could go up on the screen while Susan was describing it, but I'm sure I can find it in the packet as well.
Okay.
Can we, this is Pam, can we put it up for those residents that did not get a packet and may not be able to see it?
You need to actually share screen.
Yeah.
Yeah, not just,
It's not coming up?
no.
Oh, I see.
There it is.
There it
Thank
is.
you.
Now you got it.
Sorry. It came up on the screen here, but not on yours. I apologize. So I was saying that this is the Phase 1 that's come in at the bid price of $43,050. And so it goes down at a grade of less than 5% all the way down along the existing path, which is a steep path that goes to the bottom to the baseball field or the softball field. And we have the 2 pullouts here where we'll have a bench and also a pad so wheelchairs can stop at those locations. We have an ADA access at one space up here at the top, which is actually close to Laurel Lane, which is 1 extra space beyond where the striping is already being put in.
And provides extra walking.
And it provides extra walking, absolutely. And then, actually, the second one, Doug, too many things on my screen.
Yeah, you got it. I got it.
Did you? Is that coming up on?
Nope.
It is?
I got it.
Oh, here it goes.
Mr. Chair, I see a comment in the chat that some of the viewers are having trouble with seeing this sketch. Can there be any way it could be made larger?
Yes.
Somewhat, yeah.
It's on my screen.
I have to step away from it.
That's the Phase 2 would be the,
Yeah.
Phase 2 is this circular path here with the spurs that go to the other amenities. So this is the swing set, this is the climbing apparatus, this is the basketball court, This is the Sarah Godby Playground.
Can't see that.
And here are the pickleball courts. So phase one is this, this section in here.
So the recommendation is the board consider action to award the project to EB Paving and Construction for $43,050.
Is there a motion to award the project to EB Paving and Construction?
Oh,
Who's that?
I think Pam had her hand up.
Okay, Pam? That-
I was going to make a motion.
I'll second whatever motion you make.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any discussion, questions? Seeing none, we'll move to a vote. All those in favor, raise your hand, say aye, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, 4 aye votes, Mr. Abrams has left the room. So 4-0, motion carries. Mr. Manager, anything else we need?
I have no other business for the board.
Is there any other business anyone wishes to bring to the board? Seeing none, I'll accept a motion to adjourn.
So move. Pam Robb.
I'll second that.
Okay, moved and seconded. In favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
everybody.
Mr. Chair, for your work tonight.